Hey guys, what's up? It's Zed here, and today I'm going to do my highly requested settings video for 2020. A lot of people have been asking me to do this, so I figured I'd go through and explain each and every choice for my settings. I'll also leave a link in the description below to my actual settings so that you can import them directly into your game. And at the end of the video, I'll be doing a big shout out to everyone who's used code ZED in the past month in the KR shop. So if you want your own shout out in this video or the next video, make sure to use code ZED next time you buy your KR. Alright, so getting started, we're in the general section of our settings. Now, localization I have set to Sydney. That's where I live. I get really good ping in Sydney. Right now it says I'm on 5 ping, but typically I'm more around the 3 or 4 ping. So 5 ping is technically high ping for me. Language is English. It's the only language I know. Lag compensation, I have it 1. I've just gotten used to playing with lag compensation. Definitely have it on if you're someone who gets something like, 30, 40, 50 ping or higher. It will definitely help your gameplay. Auto routing and high tick rate are both turned on, and limited FPS is also turned on. I typically get around 500 to 600 FPS, which you can see on my streams, but when I'm on Kanji, it does seem to sap a lot of that FPS, so don't take it for granted right now that that's what I'm getting, because I mean, you can see it's sort of going up right now, but I'm normally around the 500 to 600 mark. Window capture I have turned on. Now, although I'm using a 2 PC setup and I don't need to have this on to record my gameplay, sometimes I do use the gaming PC to record bits and pieces for background footage. And in order to do that, I need to have window capture on, or I need to use a display capture in my streaming software. But I just find window capture for me works a lot better and comes out higher quality. Turn that on if you're a streamer, especially if you're streaming on a 1 PC setup. Turn that on, use window capture, and you'll be able to record your gameplay for Twitch or Facebook gaming. I almost said Mixer, but Mixer's gone. Discord RPC I've turned off, and obviously these 2 settings you only use if you need to use them. Now, moving on to controls. My keybinds are all default. That's shift for crouch, space for jump, all that kind of stuff. I got used to playing on that, and I felt no need to change from that. Gameplay wise, my X and Y sensitivity are at default, but my aim X and Y sensitivity are at 1.2. It's important to note that I use a Logitech G502 Hero with about half of the weights in the mouse that come with it at a 450 DPI. I'm also using an extra large mouse pad that covers pretty much my entire desk, so I have a lot of room to flick my mouse around. If you're not working with that much room, if you've got a small mouse pad, or maybe you're using a trackpad, turn your DPI up or turn your sensitivity up, so that when you move, you're able to cover a lot more ground and you're not having to sort of like swipe. It'll help you play your game better, track your opponents better. It'll take a bit of getting used to, but it'll speed up your gameplay. And that's essentially what you want at the end of the day. Slide control up to 6, so I actually grip to the ground. When I had it on lower slide control, it felt like I glided on the ground, which was comfortable, but it's easier to change direction when your slide control's at 6. Scroll direction is on, that's at default, and these 3 settings are turned off. Coming down to controller, I don't use a controller. I don't even use a controller for Rocket League, which I should, but these are all default. I haven't messed with these. If you're using a controller for Krunker, what's wrong with you? Let's move on to display. First off, the rank is the UI scale under the interface subheading. Now, a lot of people actually have the UI scale somewhere in the middle here, at 0.5 or 0.4 or 0.3. I've seen UCD have a pretty large UI scale. I like to have mine at 0.1. It makes it look cleaner and crisper. It doesn't take up as much real estate on the screen, so I can see more of what's going on in the background. That's a personal preference. You don't have to do that, but I just personally think it looks better. I have my show UI on, and I have the old scoreboard turned on. I really like it. I don't like having to press a button to pop my scoreboard up. I like being able to look straight up to the top right, not interrupt my gameplay, and know where I'm currently sitting in a server, especially for videos where I'm doing challenges and I'm trying to be the best in that server. It's really, really helpful. Use old browser is turned off, and disable rarity animations is turned off. Now, you should turn that on if you're trying to get more FPS in your game. I have heard mixed reports that it helps some people and doesn't help others, because it's obviously less things moving on screen. So it should theoretically help your FPS. So give it a go. Let me know in the comments below if it actually does help your FPS. I'd love to know from a larger group of people. Show profile pictures is on, HP bars is on, hit indicators is on. Now I've changed my hit indicator color to pink. That's just a personal style choice. It just stands out a lot more. There's not a lot of pink in this game except for Kanji. So in most maps, it really stands out on the screen. Show damage is on, and damage color is also pink. My crit color is purple, and damage scale is at 1. So that's all pretty much default besides the colors. Now, these 3 are pretty important to me. My kill feed, my kill counter, and my death counter. These help me and my stream and my videos keep track of where I'm currently at in that round. It also helps me understand how well I'm playing in that round. Now, I have score counter turned off. That's because I have the old leaderboard up the top right, which is already tracking my score. So that would just be taking up screen real estate, which I don't want to happen. Now, I also have my show streak counter on. If you're grinding for nukes, I would suggest you have that on so you can see exactly where you're at with your nukes. You might think you're actually at 24 kills when you're actually at 26 and you can already enable your nuke. You might not notice the little symbol down the bottom. I know it's happened to me a bunch of times, so I keep that on so I can always refer to that straight away and know exactly where I'm sitting. My ping and FPS are always on. That's simply just so I can show my stream what ping and FPS I'm playing at. It's a common question you get if you're a streamer. You don't really need to have that on if you're not streaming. You can if you want. I don't think it impacts performance at all, but it's sort of a personal choice. Show movement speed I keep off. Speed, X and Y offsets I keep default. Show medals I also have turned on. Now that's the breakdown of your kills. That's, you know, like your headshot, wallbang, all that kind of stuff. I have heard reports it helps your FPS as well if you turn that off. So give it a go and let me know in the comments as well if that helps. I would really, really like to know that. Now, name tag display, all this name tag stuff is at default right now. I haven't even changed the colors. They're at default because, you know, green and red are the typical good and bad guy colors. So XP color is at purple. Again, just a style choice. Change it to whatever you want. And the opacity is at 1. You can play around with that. You know, it might look stylized better if you turn it down. I'm not too sure, but it doesn't take up a lot of screen real estate. It's really just down the bottom, so it doesn't bother me too much. Now, my chat box I have always on. That's so I can always see people begging me for KR skins because I really love that. And the profanity filter is turned off. But look, I would suggest if you're playing this game in school or you're playing it and your parents are around, or maybe you're just, you know, really sensitive to harsh words online, turn that on so that you don't have to go through it, because sometimes the chat can get a little bit toxic. League of Legends chat is pretty toxic, but I feel like certain areas in Krunker can get a little bit more toxic than others. Now my show play messages are on, unboxings are on, chat opacity at 1. All of this is at default, so you can leave that as it is. Coming down to Crosshair, I use an image Crosshair. I'll also link the Crosshair in the description as well so that you guys can get that. If you want to get the same Crosshair as I do that I have on stream, all you got to do is go to image, paste the link. I keep my opacity at 1. I have custom opacity turned off, and I have always show turned on. Now, I've seen a lot of people say leave it on, don't leave it on. I personally like to leave it on because I always know where the center of the screen is at that point. Some monitors come with a feature where you get a crosshair always on the screen anyway, but I like to keep it there so I know before I even go down the sights of my gun, I'm aiming at the person correctly. My hit markers are on. The colors are white and red. This is all default stuff. I haven't messed around with it. I think the current hit markers are fine, and they're not really something you need to mess with. They're too innocuous to really bother me or really bother anyone, I feel like. Moving on over to the render section. This is the area that's going to affect your FPS the most. So we'll start off with performance. You can see I've got my resolution at 2. That makes the game look extremely crisp and has less jagged lines, less harsh edging, stuff like that. So if you turn that down, you'll see that the game slowly but surely becomes a 1980s M-DOS adventure game. If you're looking to improve your FPS and give yourself some more frames, keep it as low as you can go. I mean, at 0.4, it's really not that bad. There's some harsh edges, but you might get an extra 30 FPS out of that. So definitely play around with that. I know I had it at 1. I mean, 1 looks fine on its own, and it really does help, but I do enjoy going up to 2. So moving on to frame cap. I keep mine at 0. I don't like to cap my frames, but I know a lot of people like to do it when they're doing spins and stuff. So if you're doing spins and you want to make it look a little bit cooler and last a little bit longer, put like maybe 60 or 120 FPS into there. My aspect ratio is at 1656 by 1080. That is the maximum recommended ratio in the game, so it's what I go with. I have a 1080 monitor. I'm on a 144 Hertz refresh rate, so that really works for me and makes the game look really good as well. Low spec, turn that on if you want a bit of extra FPS. No textures, you could turn that on as well for extra FPS. And map details, I have that turned on because I like to see more of the map. If you want to turn that off, that will also get you a bit of extra FPS, so turn that off. Particles is another one you can turn off for extra FPS, and particle distance and render distance are things you can play with in order to improve your FPS. I keep mine at default. I really, like I said, I'm already at a pretty decent FPS, so I don't feel the need to mess around with these, but you could really drop these down to bare minimum to try and get a few extra frames out. Shadows I have turned on, but if you're again trying to improve your FPS, turn those off. Soft shadows, high res shadows, and dynamic shadows will all impact your FPS. I keep those off. There are certain sections where I do feel the benefits don't outweigh the impact on my FPS. So I keep those turned off. I'm happy with the default shadows as it is. Ambient shading, bullet trails, and muzzle flash really don't hit your FPS too much apparently, but I keep them on anyway. Sniper flap I turned off. That's a style choice for me. It will impact your FPS, but the sniper flap was just super annoying to me, bouncing around all the time, just distracting me while I'm trying to play competitively. So I just turned that off. Texture animations, object animations, again, FPS hitters, turn them off if you want more FPS. And screen shake. Now, really, you only see that when someone shoots a rocket launcher at you, and most of the time, people with rocket launchers are terrible aim anyway, so doesn't impact me that much. I don't mind it, but turn it off maybe if you get nauseous. Weapon shine I have turned off, and lighting I have on normal. Now, down to editing here. I have pretty much everything set to default except for my pop-up skull color, which I have as blue now. My saturation in-game and UI I have at 1.8. So that'll make the game look a lot more vibrant. If I move this down to 1, you'll see that the game suddenly becomes a bit more dull in the background. If I move it all the way down, you'll see the dramatic shift. All the colors are basically gone. So Krunker by default can be a pretty bland looking game if you just use the basic saturation setting. I find 1.8 looks really nice, makes it a bit lively, and doesn't strain your eyes or feel too bright. So I leave my saturation at 1.8 for both saturation in-game and saturation UI. My color hues are at 0, my vignet's at 0, and my kill feed limit is at 8. That's, again, a personal choice. You can change to whatever you want. But my bullet traces are a nice light blue. That just helps them stand out a bit more. It feels cool. I'd also recommend trying like maybe red, and it looks like the blasters from Star Wars and stuff like that. But, you know, turn those off if you, again, just want some more FPS. A lot of this stuff you can turn off just to improve your FPS. It's really cool. There's a lot of customization with the settings in Crosshair. Moving on to our second last section here, we have the game section. First off the bank, we have field of view. Now, field of view is a pretty highly contended point right now. People are sort of arguing whether lowering it gives you better aim or tracking or whatever, or if increasing it does. Personally, I just like the look of the field of view at a higher FOV. I like having it at 120 so I can see more around me. And I like having my weapon FOV at 120 so I can see more around me. It just helps me track what's going on, helps me see people coming from my sides as well. I've played this game for well over 500 hours now. And I can tell you right now, my personal experience is that lowering it didn't give me better aim or anything like that. And increasing it actually gave me more awareness of what was going around. Change it to your liking and play around with it until you find something that really works for you. Some people will find 90 is better for them and they'll feel more comfortable with it. Some people like me will find that 120 is better for them. And some really weird people will choose 1 FOV and never get a kill in a game. Good work. Now, moving on to weapon bobbing and leaning, I have those completely turned off. You can turn those up if you want. They're just distracting to me. I don't like them, so I just turn them off so I'm not getting distracted by it. And I can actually look at my skin when I'm running around and be like, wow, that's really cool. My unobtainable looks so cool, man. Awesome. My weapon X and Y offsets are both at 2. That just positions the gun on your screen when you're holding it. Personal choice, change it to whatever you want. Weapon Z offsets at 1, that's default, and ADS-Y offset is 1, that's default as well. Weapon aim animation is on. Hide weapon on ADS is on as well. Now, this one is almost a personal choice, but it's almost a competitive choice as well. So what this means is when you aim down your gun, the entire gun disappears off the screen and you're just left with your crosshair. This to me feels way more competitive and way better to actually play at a higher level with, because you're not having your gun take up like 1/4 of your screen. You're able to see everything below you, above you. Nothing's obstructing your view, nothing's distracting you, and you can just focus on who you're meant to be shooting. If you watch streamers or YouTubers, you see a lot of them have this setting turned on. So give it a try and let me know whether it helped you with your aims. Moving on to show hands, I have that turned off. That's simply because the hands take up a lot of real estate over the guns that you use. And I like the guns that I use, and I worked hard to get the skins that I have. For the skins that I use, I like to see them. I like to see the entire thing. You know, I like to see the handles and the stocks and all that kind of stuff. So turning off your hands makes it easier to see that. So I would recommend doing that if you're, you know, a fan of the skins that you have. I have my show primary, secondary, and melee all on so I can see the skins. Coming down to customization here, if you're someone who uses mods in the game, which I recommend you do, a lot of them really do improve the quality of life in the game, you can turn on load mods and auto load mod. Now, load mods will allow you to actually go in here and load the mods. Auto load mod means when you change servers or restart the game, those mods should load straight away. There are sometimes some issues with it, but 9 times out of 10 it works, so give it a go. Some mods I would recommend just off the bat here would be the Crucial mod, if you're wanting some more plain textures which can improve your FPS. The PUBG Silence Sound mod, if you want some cleaner, softer sounds to the guns, I feel like the current sounds are a bit jarring at times unless you turn down gun volume, whereas the silent sounds are a bit nicer. They sort of don't shake you a bit when you hear an AK go off right next to you. But play around with them, you know. That is potentially personal choice, but potentially competitive choice as well. Depends on the type of player you are. But there's thousands of mods that you can choose from. So have a play around with them and find out which one works for you. Now, I have scope borders turned off. That's simply because I prefer to have a cleaner vision when I'm scoping in, mainly because I do a lot of quick scoping. So I don't like 4/5 of my entire screen being black and only being able to see the middle part there. It's just distracting. It means you're not seeing what's happening around you as well. You're just basically tunnel visioning yourself. So I have that turned off. Helps me stay more competitive. I have a scope to go along with that, which I'll link in the description as well, that you guys can use. It's a scope I got off Google Images. I edited and made it into my own thing, and you guys are more than welcome to use it. I've got a lot of compliments from using it on stream, so give it a go if you want to try it out. Now, reticle, I don't have a reticle, so there's nothing pasted in there. I also haven't messed around with reticle image width or height. You can if you want. Match end message, I've got nothing there at the moment, but you could, you know, put something in there. I mean, you guys could do this at home too. You know, you could just type, use code Z, and just, you know, let everyone in your server know what the best creator code is to use. You just be doing basically a public service, and I know that everyone in that server will thank you and send you KR afterwards for doing such a kind thing. Moving on to profile image, again, put your custom profile images in there. MO icon, kills icon, death icon. These are things I've used in the past. If they're animated, they will hit your FPS pretty hard. So if you do choose to use these, just use a PNG. Don't use anything animated unless you really want to take the FPS hit. Again, deaths, strike counter. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's all what pops up under your score. I have my damage overlay on. I used to have a custom damage overlay. I don't anymore, but you can find plenty of them online. But again, this is just more stuff, more icons that you can change. And the same rule applies. Use GIFs, you'll take an FPS hit. Moving on to our final section here, we've got the sound section. It's very small. And this is going to come down to the sort of headset you use. I use earphones because I don't like the confined feeling of headsets, but if you got really good headsets, I mean, you might want to turn this down even further or turn it up if you got more customization on your headset. But I keep mine at 0.5. My ambient volume's at 0. That's like sort of, if you're on, you know, Citadel, for instance, you'll hear like a wind in the background sometimes. I have that off. I find it distracting. I listen to music anyway when I play. So I keep that off. Voice volume I have at 1, and weapon volume I have all the way down at 0.4. I have started to use the default Krunker sounds, but I had to turn this down to 0.4 so it wasn't as jarring and as loud when you hear it. I get, you know, plenty of comments on stream if I leave that at 1, saying the weapons are way too loud, turn them down. But, you know, if that's someone like you who wants to, you know, stream the game, but you don't want to turn that down, just use the PUBG silence settings through the mod loading. They're perfect. You can have that at 1 and it won't sound too loud. That is my settings as of today. If my settings ever change dramatically, I will create some update videos to this, but I've had basically these settings for the past year and they haven't led me wrong. My KDR is always going up. I've been recruited by some of the top clans like Verb and Law. They just work for me, and they will work for you as well. I definitely encourage you to play around with them a little bit and find what suits you. You know, the mouse you use isn't going to be the same mouse as I use. The keyboard you use isn't going to be the same keyboard. All that kind of stuff. You need to customize them to your liking, but you take my settings, import them into the game. You'll have at least a really good foundation to start your foray into editing settings in Krunker. And a big shout out to all the people currently on screen who have used my creator code in the past month. Thank you so much for supporting me. And if you want to get your name featured in this list for the next video, make sure to use code Z when you're in the KR shop next time you're buying your KR. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on the little bell for notifications. If you have any questions around settings or you want to learn more about what settings you should use or what settings do, make sure to come hit me up at twitch.tv/HeyI'mZ. Come and chat with me live and I can answer your questions right there. That's all for the video. Thank you guys so much and I'll see you next time. Bye.